Big LEZ'S League, an all rugby league experience. Hello, welcome back to Big LEZ'S League, an all rugby league experience. I'm your host, Big Les. This is one of the first interview podcasts that we are doing for the off season. And I thought I'd grab my mate who we've obviously already built a little bit of a relationship doing a few different podcasts together, but Issa, currently a zero tackle journalist working a little bit with the ABC as well. Isaac, how you going, brother?
I'm good, man. Thank you for having me on. I know that I guess this part of the off season a little bit quieter, so I'm keen to come on and kind of chat and stir up a little bit of noise, even if there's not too much going on at the moment, man.
Yeah, 100%, brother, 100%. And look, I mean, looking back at last year for yourself, a pretty amazing little rise there. Obviously, getting a bunch of new followers in, pretty cool, right? How's that sort of whole ride been for yourself over the last 12 months?
Yeah, it's been surreal, to be honest. Funnily enough, that many people may not realize this, but you know yourself, you were the first person to ever reach out to me. I think I had 200 followers, if that, at the time. And you know we kind of built a really big audience and a big kind of community since then. So you've seen it kind of from the start, how it kind of started out, and it's been a really crazy, surreal ride. A lot of noise and stuff that I probably wasn't prepared for or to happen so quickly. But I'm absolutely blessed. And with that has come a lot of opportunity, a lot of which we'll kind of talk about today. But no, it's been really cool. I've met a lot of really cool people, and I've gotten, a lot of really cool opportunities and kind of stuff like that. So no, it's been a really good year. I'm hoping for an even bigger one this year.
100%, brother, 100%. And I think what's cool about yourself as well is obviously that you look at a lot of rugby league pages and they're solely rugby league. They seem to do a little bit of everything. And, looking back at some of the reels we posted a couple of days ago with Guru from that podcast, and, he was even saying that a lot of the podcasts that start up today, they sort of try and fall into the mold of Bloke and Levels and all these sort of guys that are already sort of established and have already made their mark a couple of years back. Whereas yourself, you're sort of in a little bit, I mean, other than mixed rugby league and what she's doing over there, you're sort of in a little bit of an untapped market, right?
Yeah, it's felt like that. I guess when I first kind of started out, I hadn't really realized kind of the niche of what I was doing. Like I didn't realize, how untapped the market really was, and seeing how people have kind of reacted to the work that I do and the way that I kind of approach it has been really eye-opening, because I wasn't aware. I guess rugby league fans were so so hungry for not only just the mainstream news, but junior pathways and lesser known players and little feel good stories that we can kind of chat about. But it's all these kind of extras that rugby league fans were seemingly hungry for, and they weren't getting it. So I'm really blessed that I've kind of had the opportunity to provide that. And as you said, it's been a huge rise, and I think that's just in part to what the rugby league community really is, and what they were really looking for. So hopefully, like I said, we can build on it this year, and kind of take it to another level. Never kind of finish or content, and I'm keen to see it explode even further this year.
100%, brother. I'm keen to sort of see the rise as well, and see what you sort of come up with as well, content wise, and if there's anything different coming soon, we'll sort of touch on that a little bit later. I do want to sort of take you back to the start. So, from my understanding, you weren't really planning to go into the journalism side previously. What was the previous plan after school?
Yeah, so when I finished school, I actually worked in fitness for a few years. I had no interest whatsoever in studying journalism. I didn't even know what really the steps towards that really were. So I said, I worked as a personal trainer for a couple of years, and managed a couple of gyms. And eventually, when I realized that wasn't for me, I essentially quit and just started looking at uni degrees. And when I found my course, which was media and communications, I still didn't know that I wanted to be a journalist. I just kind of thought it was an interesting route to go down. And, I continued my studies and started exploring a little bit further what I wanted to do. I realized that I liked writing, but I loved writing about rugby league, and I got a real kick out of it, a real kick out of, kind of having my own voice, talking about something that I love, and seeing how people respond to that. It's honestly such an amazing feeling. And every kind of exclusive I write, or interview, getting to do that through my own voice it's been absolutely amazing.
And how did that sort of feel? Obviously, making that move from going from a PT,
Mhm.
studying fitness, moving over to journalism. Did it feel like a big risk at the time, or were you sort of umming and ahhing about making the transition, or was it just sort of an easy coming about move for yourself?
I think like a lot of us, kind of when we are in a certain situation, whether it's a job, it's a relationship, it's a suburb you live in. Once you're comfortable, it really is hard to break out of that mold. And I was very comfortable. I was working, in this field of fitness from the age of 18 to 21. So it was kind of a scary move to kind of say, okay, I'm completely changing. And I'm blessed that I've got kind of the support and backing around me from friends and family to make that kind of transition. But, the risk of unknown is always somewhat frightening. But I also found that once I really got into the rugby league scene and rugby league media scene, I did feel quite comfortable from the start. And it was really exciting as well. So while it was scary at the time, it's proved dividends, and I'm like so happy that I did make that move.
And when you sort of took the leap to go into journalism, was there sort of always a plan to start up a page and build that sort of portfolio, or was it something that just sort of came about throughout the process?
Yeah, so the page was always in the back of my mind. I didn't know what I wanted to do with it. And it's funny, I don't even know if the page is still up. I probably made about 3 or 4 pages where I was just testing out different logos and names. And I think one was called Isaac's NRL feed, and, do all these other kind of accounts that I made. And they're probably just stewing on Instagram untouched with about 2 followers. But it was always in the back of my mind. I never kind of thought of it going to the level that it is now. When I first started, I was very hesitant to post. I was kind of, holding back a little bit, and I didn't want to step on any toes. And I also thought that, it probably wouldn't, I guess, kind of click with, random people who don't know me. I didn't really think that it would kind of connect with them. And once I started seeing that there was a little bit of buzz around it, you sort of kind of get addicted to it, and sort of start loving the idea of sharing stories with other people. Being able to share a story, and see, fans of their favorite club, be like, this is awesome. Like, I didn't know about this. They're sharing it with their friends. I feel like I'm, providing a service that, people really appreciate. So, no, there was no plan of going down this route, or I guess this heavily, but it was always in the back of my mind to do something with social media.
Yeah, for sure, bro. I know that when I sort of started the page as well, I mean, I was a lot younger than yourself. I was like 16. I started it back
Mm,
in school.
right.
Um, and even that for me, it just felt like a huge risk at the start. And I guess it always does, because you're just like, what are my friends going to say? What are the people around me going to say? Am I too young to be doing this? Are people going to throw back criticism? There's always those things that sort of play in the back of your mind. And especially for yourself to like make the move from fitness to journalism, and then to make a page about journalism as well, and posting NRL content and stuff like that. It seems like, I don't know for you, it seems like it sort of went quite fast from obviously going and starting into journalism, and then going in and starting the page, and obviously starting to create all that sort of content. Did it sort of move quite fast for yourself, and how has the ride, I guess, been the same?
Yeah, it was actually quite a fast transition, especially the last few years. I talk about when I finished school and when I got into uni, and I only just turned 23, so it has been a very, very quick ride, really. I officially got my first journalism job when I was 21, going on to 22. So, really, I haven't been in it that long, but about a year and a couple months, really. So, it's still very fresh for me. And to see kind of, high profile pages or papers and websites kind of refer to my work as a source is absolutely wild, because I haven't been in it that long. But at the same time, I'm kind of happy to know that whatever fast rise it has been, it's been off the back of work that I've done and effort that I've put in, and connections and relationships that I've made. So it's been very quick and not kind of at the speed that I thought it would. But I have felt somewhat prepared to take any and all of it on as it comes.
It's got to be so exciting, right? To like be, I guess, in year 2 now, and to already have this base of followers, this community. Yeah, as you said, the people are starting to use your stuff as a source. That's got to be so exciting for you, right? And I guess that sort of leads me into my next question. What is the plan for yourself for year 2? Is there any sort of things that you're going to start to implement and try and break the mold, try and create a bit more of a point of difference to guys like mixed rugby league and stuff like that? What, I guess, can you say now on what's year 2, I guess, going to look like for Isaac Issa?
Yeah, absolutely. I guess it's kind of crazy to say, and perhaps I'm maybe overselling it, but I do think that this year will be bigger than last year. I'm somewhat comfortable in believing that what I've kind of built over the last year has turned into my brand, and as all brands should, I think growth and adaptation and evolving is part of the process, and I never want to be content. So this year is going to be a bigger year. Last year I obviously got into the social media stuff and started doing reels and doing a little bit more voice and face to camera stuff. I do want to build into that a little bit more this year. I think that there's an audience for a little bit more face to camera stuff, whether that be a podcast, whether that be streaming. I definitely think there's an audience for it. And I think people will really connect with kind of getting their news in one place from a source they trust. Obviously, you've got the social media, which I recommend you all to go follow. But I think that that's kind of going to be the route that we go down next. A lot more face-to-camera stuff, a lot more kind of inviting the audience in to ask their questions and stuff. Because at the end of the day, I get so many DMs every day from people asking about their favorite team and their favorite player, which I absolutely love answering. But I think that if there's an opportunity for me to kind of build on that a little bit more and build a little bit of anticipation for people to come visit, either the stream or the YouTube video or the Spotify podcast, I definitely think that's something that we're going to build into this year.
100%. You were sort of touching on face to camera there as well. That was going to be my next question. How, I guess, important have you found showing your face to camera, giving your audience someone to connect with, ask questions to? How important have you found showing your face to camera and building that connection in your growth, and obviously, I guess, gaining the mass followers that you did this year?
I'm going to be honest, it was extremely scary for me to do originally. Now, when I first started out kind of, down this route of journalism, I made a real big point that I didn't want to be, a super well-known journalist or someone, like Michael Chamis or Brent Reed or David Reed. I didn't want to be that. I wanted to kind of be behind the scenes because I felt I wasn't, I guess, prepared for, the negativity that comes with, having a face to your name. And you'll see if you go to my social media, I haven't changed my profile picture since I started, which is my Isaac Issa logo. My whole plan was to never show my face. But when I started showing my face and talking a little bit more and doing a little bit more face to camera, the way people responded was completely unexpected in the best way possible. I feel that just like when you listen to your favorite artist or you watch your favorite show, you build a subliminal connection with that person, even though you haven't met them. And that's exactly kind of what's happened. People, feel that they know me and that they can chat to me. And with that has come, when I'm out and about, people come up to me and say, "Oh, you Isaac," and have a good chat about footy and stuff, which is honestly beautiful because, again, it means that I've made somewhat of a mark on their day, a positive mark. And so, yeah, it was extremely frightening when I first did it, but it's absolutely proved dividends, and I'm so glad that I did. And that's exactly why I want to build on that this year.
And I think it's so important for someone like yourself and your page as well, because I think the difference between yourself and myself, my brand is the podcast, and it's sort of a little bit different. I obviously post the rugby league content, and it's all good and well for us to show our faces, and I guess to some extent, that our brand is us. But I think for a much bigger extent, your brand is you, I feel like, as well. And, you're talking about haven't changed the logo since the start. I almost think that you should just make it you, bro. Because I feel like, as I was sort of saying, like, people are following Isaac Issa, the journalist, to hear from Isaac Issa, the journalist, his scoops, his news, you breaking all this sort of stuff as well. So I sort of think that, if I was to throw some recommendations, we sort of had a little bit of a chat pre-recording, but I reckon your brand should well and truly be yourself, and showing yourself as well, which will be cool. As I said, I'm super excited to see what you've got coming this year, bro, because I feel like I definitely would be excited myself if I was starting year 2 of my podcast with such a really good community of followers, and a large quantity of them as well. I think that you're in such an awesome position, and really, really keen to see what you throw out there this year, bro. I guess my next question off the back of that. So I guess this is something that a lot of people wonder with journalists as well. Getting scoops, getting all of these little inside stories and stuff. How do you sort of build those connections and be able to get those scoops? And I guess a second part or off that, when you're just starting out the page, or when you were just starting out the page, are you sort of just consuming the news like everyone else and then regurgitating it? Like, what was the process when you were starting out the page in regards to, putting out news, and then obviously building those connections with journos, with, different people to sort of get those inside stories?
Yeah, absolutely. And this is the most important part of my job, and my favorite part of my job. When I first started out, it was essentially 100% aggregating other news. I had alerts on my phone and on my laptop from every major journalist or news page, and because I did find that there wasn't a place for people to just get all their news at once. I know that you might, at least on Instagram, you got MixRL, but other than that, really, there's not too much going there. So I essentially just started out just aggregating news and also plugging in my journalism work for Zero Tackle, and then scoops and exclusives and stuff wasn't even anything I'd really thought about. I was kind of, when I started out, I was somewhat comfortable that I'm just starting out. It's not going to happen for me now. We'll get there. I'll learn. And then as I started growing a bit of a following, I've had, player agents reach out, and essentially, provide me with stories and news and blah, blah, blah. And as I've continued building the base that I've got, more agents wanted to kind of connect and continue to connect and build that rapport. Which takes me to kind of where I'm at now, which is kind of a complete different process. Now, as a journalist, how I get majority of my scoops now, the most, I guess, reliable way is to get it from player agents or from club officials. So what I've got is a pool of agents that kind of reach out to me or inform me of what's going on with their clients. And we kind of go back and forth just to make sure that the story kind of is respectful and accurate. And then I publish my stories. And then there's obviously, kind of insiders or people who have close connections to the club who also provide with stories, and players themselves as well. One that kind of springs to mind straight away, not a big story, but a couple of weeks back, there was a story about Josh Schuster meeting with Anthony Seibold. And I was lucky enough to have a chat to Schuster myself, and he kind of clarified what that was all about. And that's kind of how really I continue to kind of build on that and make an effort to get reliable information. Now, I can tell you I get, tens and 20s and 30s DMs every day with people kind of providing scoops that don't, really pan out. So I'm very kind of selective with how I go about that process. And I'm lucky that, majority of that has been absolutely correct. And that just builds a little bit more respect and authority. So, the process has been somewhat of a learning curve for me. But now I believe that we're kind of at a point where it's somewhat of a smooth process.
Bro, so many questions off the back of that. So many questions. First off, the big one for me. So these player agents, some of them, and all of these sort of guys, they're coming to you mostly. Is that how it sort of works? They sort of reach out to yourself. How's that process? So they send you a text. Hey, Isaac, this such and such player is looking to go to blah.
A lot of the agents kind of want journalists that they trust, and a lot of them have their own specific journalist or platform that they reach out to, and that's essentially how it works with my role. I've got a few agents from different agencies who kind of trust the work that I do and feel comfortable enough to kind of reach out and chat to me. So that's the main route that kind of goes. The other way would obviously be me reaching out to them. And kind of getting my news that way. And that's the same with kind of getting player interviews and stuff like that, just having a relationship with their managers or agents and organizing it through there. And then off the back of that, you've obviously just got, club officials you can kind of reach out to and chat to as well, although they are kind of constricted or bound a little bit more by, rules and regulations and stuff like that. So that's usually the main route that kind of goes. And that's why it's super important to build these relationships with the agents and making sure that you're kind of being respectful and authentic with the news that you kind of provide.
And when you're studying journalism, like at uni, is it something that's like taught as well there, like building these relationships, maintaining these relationships with guys that give you inside information and stuff like that? Is that something that's like taught, or is it something that you actually just have to build up with the experience that you get from actually being
it's not something that you're taught at uni. A lot of the and again, I don't mean to talk down on uni because obviously I'm going to uni, but a lot of the stuff that you kind of need to do outside of actually in the field, you're not really taught. Which is why it's really, really, really important to have initiative and kind of be open to feedback and exploring new routes, especially in something like media that is so diverse and is just changing all the time. You look at, for example, and we talk about footy podcasts and stuff. There's none bigger than Bloke in a Bar. And if you listen to him, Kempy kind of talk about his journey, when he first came out with the potty, no one was kind of doing potties. Now there's heaps. Then, you kind of got, streamers and stuff from a few years ago. Not many people were streaming. Now a lot of people are doing it. So you kind of need to be open to, kind of moving with the times and kind of adapting and learning. And that goes with building relationships through either social media, that's kind of the main route that I try to go down, kind of building them through social media and getting contacts and stuff like that. So, it's not something you really taught. I kind of picked it up as I continued working on my craft and building my career up.
Yeah, bro. I'm just trying to think of what my next question was going to be. I've just lost my train of thought because I was listening to some of the other stuff that you were saying. But I think that is so valuable, right? In the sense that I reckon it's been awesome, and I want to hear your comment on this. Do you think it's helped much having the page and having that exposure, compared to obviously going through the journalism degree, coming out of it, not really having, a media like out page, like an Instagram or something like that, like you have, and a page with a decent following in regards to obtaining those, scoops and inside information, relationships with player agents, players, this sort of thing. Do you find that it's been like a lot easier building those relationships and building that trust?
Yeah, I think that
this page as well.
I guess I've gone somewhat of a different route to a lot of journalists. Now, I can't say that I've gone down a better route because obviously I'm in year 2, but I can say that I've gone somewhat of a faster route than a lot of these other journalists. So you've got guys like, Michael Carianis, Michael Chamis, David Riccio. They've obviously got, probably hundreds of contacts and reliable sources and stuff. And that's built through their, ongoing work over years and stuff like that. And that takes a lot of hard work. I think that I've gotten a lot of my, exclusives and scoops and stuff like that through my brand and my social media presence, and people realizing kind of what I do through there, as opposed to just, the articles I write, and stuff like that. So the route that I've gone down has definitely been, a more efficient route, and I've been able to develop, contacts and scoops and exclusives, that's like realistically I wouldn't have gotten for another 5 years, maybe longer. So yeah, I've definitely gone down a faster route, and it has been a really, really good way to build on that. And in saying that as well, the landscape may have been just completely dry if I just gone down the more original journalism route. You've obviously got so many well-known journalists who have gone down, the route of working for the paper and then eventually for a website and then, going on TV, the traditional route. I believe that I've now kind of gone into uncharted territory that a lot of these journalists haven't. And that could also be another reason why I guess I've been able to kind of generate these relationships and have a bit more of a rapport with them.
100%. Would you recommend this route to others going through their sports journalisms or just normal journalism degrees for any sort of niche? It doesn't even have to be sport. It could be, I don't know, any sort of thing from that journalistic degree point of view. Do you recommend
Yeah, I
your
think
route
that
to
I think
others
we're going down. We're
as
heading
well?
into a time that if people didn't realize it 10 years ago, I think they definitely realize it now. Social media, and just any kind of way of media that you get through your device is where the world is kind of going now. And I think it's absolutely important to really acknowledge that and then kind of build off that. Now, I wouldn't recommend. I think that a lot of people kind of hear that and then go on to, I guess, just completely replicate what they see in front of them. But I think that we've kind of learned that, replicating an original doesn't really, you're not going to get the same kind of reception from it. And I think that's why it's really cool to see, even moving away from a journalism, perspective, people like yourself, you got so many people on social media who are really just doing their own thing, and putting their own twists on it. And I think that's where you get success from. So I definitely recommend going down the social media route, or even just building your brand in whatever way you can, whether that's streaming, podcast, whatever it is that you believe that you're going to tap into an untapped market. But it's really, really important to be original. In however you kind of want to go about it. So you want to be able to provide something to people that they wouldn't have gotten otherwise. I think that's where the pride kind of comes from, and the drive to continue going. And then I feel that I've somewhat been able to do that, obviously with the help of a lot of people, and a lot of kind of inspirations. But no, that's something I definitely recommend for sure.
I think as well, like we've seen so many journos, like a few of the ones that you brought up, your Riccios and Carianis, these sort of guys, they're all jumping on podcasts now, doing their own podcasts, weekly things, going through news, different sort of things with Triple M on radio and stuff like that. I'm going to put you on the spot here, and I'm going to ask you a pretty deep question. If you had to sort of predict what the landscape for journos, particularly sports journos, is going to look like in the next 5 years, what is something that you think is going to be quite prominent, or what do you think that landscape is going to look like for guys like yourself, in that sports journalism?
Yeah, I think
sort of
that
space?
it's going to be very different to what we see now. Now, I'm absolutely grateful for the position that I'm in right now, but I do have goals of building off that further. And one of my goals is, and I said it in a lot of stuff on my own page and stuff like that. My goal isn't just to be an NRL journalist; it's to push the needle and move into that next generation of journalists in Australia, sports journalists in Australia. I think that we're going to go down a route that is a lot more digital. a lot more, I guess, short form and kind of, I guess, quick to access and stuff like that. I think that's the route that we're going to go down, and I don't think that needs to be a negative if you do it right. People, I guess, especially of older generations and stuff, kind of look at the social media space and think it's somewhat unauthentic. I think that people, if anything, build a little bit more of a relationship through social media and whatever they kind of garner from their phones and stuff like that. So I think that if it's done right, I think we could see a huge shift in the landscape. Whether that's shifting away from the newspapers, shifting away from TV shows like you've got NRL 360 and stuff like that, which are obviously very successful. But we could see that move into more of a short form or online kind of space. So I definitely think that there's going to be changes. And what excites me is being a part of that change and kind of being able to stick with the times and adapt and move. And I don't think that's going to leave any journalists, like any of these senior journalists, behind. As you said, we already see guys, like Chamis and Karianis, Paul Kent. A lot of them are hopping on podcasts and stuff now, and they are doing well. They're doing quite well. And I think that that's really the space that we're heading into now.
And then I guess you've sort of already answered that a little bit there with what you were saying, but let's just say that I'm doing my sports journalism degree and I want to start a page or I want to sort of get into that space to adapt to what the landscape may look like in the next 5 years, or sort of what you were describing there. What's the first thing that you'd recommend me to do in that scenario to adapt to that?
So like I said
journey?
before, it's really important to be original, but I also said that it's important to have inspirations and stuff like that. Now, when I first started up my page, I followed pages like MixRL, Clarkie's column, Bleacher Report, a lot of these different pages, Complex, and I still do it today. I kind of get inspiration from them and blend it all together into one. And then from there, see what works and what doesn't work. Now, if you scroll down on my page, you're going to see a very different kind of format in the way that I used to kind of do news when I first started, which we're going on 12 months in a couple weeks now. So it's very different because I kind of learned what does work, what doesn't work. For example, the way that I generate my graphics now, a big focus is keeping things social friendly, for people to reshare their stories and kind of get their information quickly, having 2 lines instead of 3 lines, 4 lines of information, and keeping everything tight and easy to read, but also eye-popping. And that's from kind of looking at what other pages and other companies, big pages, small pages were doing, and kind of taking it from there. So again, I'm no social media guru. I'm not, I haven't studied a social media degree. I haven't even finished my journalism degree. And yet, I've been able to kind of build a following and stuff based off being open to feedback and not being stubborn in how my growth kind of, goes. I mentioned it earlier. You were the first person to reach out to me when I first started. And if you look back at our first kind of potty together, I was very nervous because I hadn't done the face to camera stuff, and I never intended to. But again, it was from drawing inspiration and being open to feedback that I was able to kind of do that, and it's proved dividends. So my number one kind of, I guess, suggestion to anyone who's wanting to go down whatever route you're wanting to go down, be open to feedback and really look for inspiration and make it your own.
100%, bro. I couldn't have said it any better myself, to be honest. I think you're 100% right, and I even just think the importance of showing your face from the start as well. Like I think you were sort of alluding to it before. I asked you before the difference between when you start and it's mostly just the graphics and you don't really intend to show your face. You think it's just going to sort of, it's not so much that you think it's all going to come from just posting the graphics and stuff like that, and you don't really need to create a face to the name. But I just feel like being able for, like, as a fan and as a consumer, to sort of build that connection straight away is so valuable. And it just makes it so much easier to follow. It makes it so much easier to consume. I think that that's probably sort of what I look at, and you're doing it now as well, obviously jumping on these different podcasts, but also with the short form reels that you're doing and stuff like that, which I think is really cool. And I think that that's probably, obviously you're saying it's going to be a big year next year, and it's going to be bigger and better. I think that that's probably where it's going to come from, to just obviously get people, more and more people building that connection with yourself, building that relationship with yourself. You're getting more of these, player managers and stuff like that reaching out. So I think if you were able to do that from the start, that's obviously going to be the thing that that's going to be the major draw card, right? Being able to build that connection straight away. Is that something you sort of wish that you had done from the start?
I think that that's definitely one of the things that I think would have been a good idea from the start. I guess I'm somewhat I'm grateful that I kind of picked up on that somewhat early in the first couple months, that people do kind of draw a little bit more of a connection to people through social media when they kind of know who they are, and can put a face to the name. And you build a subliminal loyalty to that person as well, even if you don't really realize it. And I feel like that's kind of, people have built that kind of loyalty to myself, which is absolutely wild to say, but it makes me really happy. It makes me feel really good that not only have I shown my face and my personality and the way that I talk and the person that I am, but that people have kind of resonated with that, and feel comfortable enough to, for example, come up to me and say hello, or reach out to me, send me a DM, or even invite me on a podcast as you've done on countless occasions. It makes me feel really good and really blessed that I did do it eventually. But no, I definitely recommend doing it from the start. But first and foremost, know that you're going to, you need to be consistent and authentic. People see right through that kind of fake facade and stuff like that. And at the end of the day, I guess for myself, and I know definitely for you and for a lot of other people, you want to show that, first and foremost, you're going to provide a service, but two, that you're a genuine person, and that you're going to do whatever you do with integrity and effort. So I definitely recommend it, but just be ready to as well kind of stick to your guns and kind of be consistent with what you do after you've done that.
Mate, the question that I was going to ask a few times ago when you were sort of talking about, building the relationships and getting exclusive tips and whatnot, the question that I was sort of going to go into was, if you, like at the start when you are sort of regurgitating a bunch of the news that sort of is already out there and stuff like that, before you have these connections, before you can sort of have these exclusive tips that are your own, was there quite a bit of negative sort of feedback from that at the start? Because people were like, oh, we already know that this is happening. Like, what was the sort of response like at the start when you first started pushing out content? Obviously, had already been, most of the news had already sort of come out prior to you.
Not as negative as I guess you'd think. Like, I still get negative comments, every now and then, but I think that people really appreciate. Again, I didn't realize what an untapped niche it was, an untapped market it was. I think that aggregating news is actually really important, and it's a job in itself, because you're kind of providing something that people don't have. Like, if you go over to the Daily Telegraph, you've only got Daily Telegraph stories. If you go over to Sydney Morning Herald, you've only got Sydney Morning Herald stories. Whereas if you come to my page or find my work, you're going to find everything that happened in rugby league that day, and a simple but also, I guess, beefed up overload of information, and you can kind of go through and read and catch up on your footy that way. And it also provides a way for, podcasts and other journos to kind of catch up on what's going on and chat about it. I've talked to a few other podcasts who kind of say, when they want to go through what's happening in rugby league, they go over to my page and they kind of just go through and see what's going on with the news. And I think that that's what the service is. I guess it's really important, though, to know what you're doing, and that, you are aggregating news. These aren't your stories, and it's important to source, and it's important to give credit where credit's due. and then just being open and honest with what you're doing. At the end of the day, my goal was to, I guess, tap into a market and see kind of if this was something that people were really after. And when I noticed that it was, I just did it with kind of I put 110% effort in, and off the back of that is when we started getting exclusives and stuff like that. For the first 6 months, probably 98% of my page was aggregator news, and 1%, 2% were exclusives, and now we're probably at 90% or even 80% aggregator news and 20% exclusives. So at the end of the day, what the stuff that I have done, it has kind of gotten me down the route that I was aiming to get down. And the goal is that in, a couple years, 20% is aggregated and 80% is original news. You've got journalists who, like Shams in the NBA, Fabrizio in soccer. You've got these guys who are essentially the number one source for all information in that sport. And realistically, that's the route I want to go down. I want to get to a point where I'm able to provide all rugby league news through my own sources and my own exclusives and stuff like that. So, not as negative as you think. Now, obviously, there are negative comments and stuff like that, but it's proved dividends and it's working so far. So,
And I think what's awesome as well, and it sort of helps with, I guess, the positivity from the people who are consuming your content, is what you sort of mentioned before, which is that ease of access. Like we were talking about before, where podcasters will sort of, say, oh, if you want to get your news, go here, or they'll go through the news throughout the week and they'll sort of regurgitate what you've put up on your page as well. That ease of access is so underrated. And I feel like that is obviously what's keeping people, it's limiting that negativity in my opinion as well. It's so good just to have something that you just look up Isaac Issa, you're on your page, and there you go. You've got a bunch of the news from the week. You don't have to go on Fox League or go and look up, Code Sports, this and that, and go into separate articles for news anymore. Just that having that ease of access, I think, is so valuable, and I'm sure it's something that a lot of people, I guess, appreciate as well. I do want to touch on your zero tackle and ABC. So obviously, I think from what my understanding of how that all started, and just listening to a few different potties, but I'd love to hear it from you. You talked about 110% effort, mate. From my understanding, you had to reach out to a few guys to get up opportunities with these pages, right? What's the story?
It took a lot of hustle to kind of get the opportunity. When I originally started, it started with a lot of free volunteer work and a lot of reaching out and a lot of early mornings. So when I originally started, I started doing a local radio station called 2SER, where I would go into the city at 3 a.m. and be there for however many hours and just write headlines and copies and stuff like that and speak on the radio, and from there I was able to kind of build a couple of connections that got me into the ABC after a few months, and Zero Tackle was essentially me sending out pictures and ideas and articles that I wrote and sending it to essentially every kind of platform I could kind of find. So it was a slow process and a lot of work without reward from the start. I probably sent it to about 50, and the only one to reply was Zero Tackle. So I'm absolutely blessed that they did, because it's gotten me so much opportunity. But again, even at Zero Tackle, I did a lot of free intern work, I think for about 9 months. So it was a lot of free work, a lot of overnights and stuff like that. But it all kind of paid dividends in the end.
100%. Like I've spoken to you many times, when you've had to sort of have these little openings and we had to record our podcast in a specific amount of time so you could get some sleep before going to ABC. That's just an absolute wild amount of commitment. Talking a little bit about Zero Tackle. So what is your current role there? Just writing up a couple of stories. Obviously you featured on their podcast as well. What's the role with Zero Tackle currently?
Yeah, so at the moment, what I do for Zero Tackle is I write about the latest in rugby league, and obviously kind of appear on podcasts and stuff like that. But it's been really a case of building, I guess, or understanding how the media industry works, and that's kind of what they've kind of prepared before here. So I think I've been working there since November 2024, and we're in January 2026 now. So it's been a case of essentially learning the ropes, and they've kind of brought me through as that junior journalist, and through that I've been able to learn kind of how media works, what to say, what not to say. I've been warned on a few occasions on not saying this or not referencing this, and understanding how sourcing and stuff works. So for them, I'm an NRL writer, and I essentially work to provide rugby league news through there. Also push my exclusives through there as well. So similar to your Carianis for News Corp or Chamis for Sydney Morning Herald, that's kind of my role for Zero Tackle, and it's the best job in the world, really, writing about rugby league. It's awesome. So that's kind of what I do there, and that's what's gotten me a lot of the opportunity I've got today.
And how much is the guidance of what to say, what not to say when you're writing up your articles, how much is that translated over to the page?
Immensely. It's been absolutely really knowing kind of what toes to step on, what not to step on, who to source and how to do it. And also just being very respectful when doing it. It's been huge, because if I didn't have that, or those kind of guidelines and policies in my head, I would have pissed off a lot more people than what I have. And that's why I don't get too much kind of negativity and hate through my own work. It's because I've learned to be very respectful and careful with the news and the stories that I tell. Because at the end of the day, you are a storyteller, and it's important to tell the right story. And because at the end of the day, you don't know who's reading, who's listening. And that was something, I guess, I didn't really know the true ramifications of when I first started. Because again, I knew nothing about rugby league media or media in general, really. Again, I came from fitness. So it was really important, and even to this day, it's important. The help that my editor kind of gives me, and the guidance he gives me, and that's what's going to eventually kind of push me into a successful rugby league journalism career, and a long one, I hope. But it's off the back of kind of knowing what to say, what not to say, and how to say it.
Bro, it's been absolutely awesome having you on, Isaac. It's been an awesome chat, and I think a lot of sports journalists that were in a similar position to you 12 months ago are going to take so much out of this. And even people that are starting rugby league pages like me, I think will take a lot out of this as well, because it translates over 100%. And you probably thought by the thumbnail and the headline of this podcast, you were thinking, oh, they're probably going to compare the two sports podcasts, sports journalism, and which one was better. It's not really necessarily about that at all. It's more so the fact that they cross over immensely. And that there's so much overlap there. There's so much collaboration there, and there is going to be in the years to come as well. So, Isaac, absolute pleasure. It's been awesome. And, I've even learned a bunch of stuff as well that I wouldn't have known, like getting scoops and stuff like that. So it's been real fun, mate. And keen to have you on the podcast more soon.
Yeah, absolutely, and I mentioned it already earlier in the show, but again, a huge thank you and appreciation to yourself. When you originally reached out to me, I'd say March or April last year, when I literally had no following, no one really knew who I was. So you've provided me with opportunities that I've really appreciated. And again, like I said, it's really important now that we all kind of get behind this kind of push into the next kind of realm of what rugby league media is. So thank you for having me. And I'm keen to kind of hop on again and continue kind of building.